Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 60. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge. I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot, the Duke of the Sultan of Strategery, the indestructible bridge-defying, is scared that Sean wonders how different he would sound recording under the water. So says the elder statesman of the podcast, Segulin.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, on this episode, we are going to be discussing Superman Son of Kal-El, issue number 12, and Aquaman Andromeda, number 1. We also have semi-spoilery conversation around in Speeding Bullets, The Flash number 783. We are sponsored as always by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Mr. Segulin, what is going on over at DCBService.com?
We have Deceased, War of the Undead Gods. Issue number 1, written by Tom Taylor, 40% off, only $2.99. And we have the new champion of Shazam! Nope, still not me. Number 1, 40% off, only $2.99. Thank you, DCBS.
I feel different after you did that. Is it supposed to work that way? Over at InStockTrades.com. I've been checking out the Coming Soon area, and I've been doing this a lot more. And what's cool about this, you can log in with your account and create wish lists for books that are coming up. There's some cool books on the slate. There's 100 Bullets Omnibus Hardcover Volume 2 that's coming out June 28th. Black Adam Rise and Fall of an Empire trade paperback, also June 28th. The DC Poster Portfolio of Jenny Frison trade paperback, again coming out June 28th. And Green Lantern 2021 series trade paperback Volume 2, Horatius, also coming out June 28th. Nice part is you can wish list these so you remember, which is great if you're trying to budget things out where you're like, what's coming up that I want to get? Let me wish list some of the items so I can spread things out a little bit and get them at a discount at InStockTrades.com. I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Okay, that's not going to work. Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on today's show. So, if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
I'm wondering if I'm alone that I wanted that to continue. Let's talk some comics.
There they are, all alone except for that old character.
Hey, Jim, there's been some good news this week that's come out. One of them is one I'm super excited about. I'm a huge fan of Michael Allred art, and he and Mark Russell are doing this series, Superman Space Age, which I should say, which is coming out July 26th. It's a 3-issue miniseries, and it takes place in the iconic 60s era. It includes Cold War stories, civil rights movement stories. But it takes a look at what makes Superman a powerful character and just his overall view on humanity at large, which is really cool. For me, they had me in Michael Allred art. Anything that he's done of Superman in the past has just been outstanding. So the idea of just getting more Michael Allred art has me, and him teamed up with Mark Russell is just going to be a home run. This was something that I'm glad the article came out because it was on my radar in the sense of pre-ordering it, but we're here. This is coming out soon, in a month, so I'm excited for that. Webtoons and DC have announced launch dates of the next 2 titles in their digital comics initiative. So they've got Zatanna and the Ripper, which launches July 11th, and Red Hood Outlaws, which launches August 14th. So I'm glad they're continuing on that series, but I'm also glad to see it's expanding again to more characters that are in the wider DC universe. Zatanna now, Red Hood. It's great to see more characters in that. Have you had a chance to stop by and see any of the Webtoon stuff?
No, and I keep always, again, I mean to, and I don't, and this sounds kind of neat. Again, like you were saying, I like the fact that it is Zatanna in Red Hood, not just, one of the big names. It's somebody, but to be honest, Zatanna's been around, and she's been around in other mediums, and same thing with Red Hood. So you can't, to say not one of the big names, but they're still out there. There's still non-comic book readers who know of these two characters. So it's neat to see that they're expanding out the, just that expanding out the web, of who they're pulling into these things.
Yeah, and I honestly think if you haven't seen the webtoons, they're really cool. It's a different sort of delivery because of the fact that it embraces the medium that it's created for. It's just different than the comics that were... So it's nice if you're looking for something that's just a little bit of a different vein in how it's exploring. There's a link, and I want to thank Jared Cardos again for curating all this cool news this week. But he's got a link to a really cool conversation with Detective Comics' upcoming writer, Ram V. And he talks a lot about his career. He talks a lot about his Kickstarter. It's a really great article. He talks about his upcoming detective run, though, and how it's going to be very character-driven, and about how we're really going to get to know more about Batman, more about Bruce Wayne. And I really like these characters where he's looking at the idea of, let's talk about what you don't know about this character. Uncovering yet another layer. And when you think about how long this character's been around, for somebody to be able to say, I got more to tell. I love when a fresh writer comes on and they embrace that aspect of their run on a series, where I'm going to expand it more. I've really enjoyed Ram V's work universally. Anything, if Ram V's been on it, for me, it's been phenomenal. So the idea of this writer tackling my favorite character? Yes, please. I mean, come on.
I didn't know he was doing the next upcoming run on Detective.
Yes.
So that for me, I was like, oh, nice. Okay, because he's a guy that he's now on that list of attention. He's got my attention. So I see his name on a project. I'm like, okay, I'm probably going to like this, because everything I've read so far that has had his name on it, I'm like, yes, I'm in.
One of the things I'm going to jump on after this, actually I'm really going to start listening to it today, is Spotify's Batman Unburied. It's been renewed for a second season, and I have not listened to this yet. And I love audio drama. The fact that I haven't hit this yet, I was glad that this article was up on our Facebook group, just because it reminded me again, hey, you got to put this on the top of your list. It was on my radar when it was first announced way back when. Just like anything else, I've got so many other things that I've been into and checking out, especially in audio drama. I've been listening to a lot of full cast Doctor Who audio drama. This is going to be my next thing I jump on. And I listen to it a lot, especially during this season when I'm doing yard work. I love audio drama. When I'm doing that, I can be out there for 2, 3, and more hours doing yard work, and I just get lost in story, because it's uninterrupted time, which is great. It's nice to have that. So I'm finding that's a great use for this. The last release was 10, 20 to 30 minute, 20 to 33 minute episodes, I should say, and beyond. Actually, there's a few episodes that were like 41 minutes. So I'm glad. I love when a series does these episodes where the episode length is driven by story versus like they've all got to be 22 minutes. And that's been kind of the nice thing that they've embraced in this podcasting medium. Do you listen to much audio drama, Jim?
I don't, and I want to. Part of the thing I run into is I get flustered with figuring out how to actually listen to it. Mm-hmm. So if it's not really easy, I stop. So, and I'm at the point with work a lot of times. There's some stuff I can do, but I run into, if I try to listen to stuff during work hours, I sometimes stop working. And I just listen to it. Yeah. And I can't keep doing that. So I got to keep working. So podcasts and, like with the audio dramas, I've got to actually pick out a specific time to listen to. And that's right now my biggest problem, because, it's, again, during the workday while I'm working, if it's on the side, I could maybe do it if I can keep focusing on work. But a lot of times when it's any, whenever there's, audio, whenever there's dialogue, whenever there's singing, that stops me from working. Usually I listen to just pure instrumental stuff when I'm working. So it's kind of hard for me to listen to these things, but I want to, and I mean to, and these are kind of the stuff I'm like, I think I would enjoy that.
To your point, So, in order to listen to this, and I should throw that out there, so you go to Spotify.com. You can create a free account. You log in, you can create playlists, things like that. But it's Batman Unburied. And when you do a search for it, you'll find... And actually, if you go to our Facebook group, if you click on the article, there is a direct link to Batman Unburied that you can find. But you can easily find it in Spotify. You can log in and create your own playlist. So you can add this to a playlist, which is a nice, easy way to find it. My listening with that, and I referenced before, like doing yard work, and sometimes when I'm editing the podcast, I will run, but I can't do like a story. I will do other podcasts while I'm editing the podcast, because what I have to do is periodically, our podcast, there will be sections where I'm like, oh, let me check and see what, there's times where I'm removing long pauses. There's times where I'm removing, excessive ums and things like that from the podcast. And I do, yeah, exactly. And listen to that. Well, if I tried removing every we'd be in trouble. That's the reason why you're the Duke of There was a time when I tried removing all of that, and I did, but I couldn't take like 3 days. And that's not a knock on you. We both have things that are, I'm silly when it comes to the with you, and deliberately silly. But we both have our audio tics. I have plenty of mine. We could tear them apart. But when I'm doing things like that, I can't listen to a story because the story gets broken up. I can listen to talk podcasts because I can pause those and then focus on our show and then go back to the talk podcast. With things like Unburied, I need to listen to it when I'm doing, like at work, I can't listen to where you're going with this. I can't listen to story-driven podcasts if I'm doing things I have to concentrate on. But every so often I'll do things like I will tear apart an iPad card, or, it's work that I don't do throughout the entire day, but it might be something where I'm taking an hour and working on that. And it's monotonous stuff. I don't need to be, mentally focused on it, but it's a good time for me to listen to something heavy story. And then I really enjoy it. Yard work is another great example. I don't need to be heavily focused on yard work. I'm pushing around a lawnmower. So, or I'm edging and stuff like that. That does not require a lot of my brain cells. So I can devote everything to story. And I found that I really love when I'm outside doing that type of work. It's a really great time to throw on my noise-canceling headphones and be able to enjoy a good podcast story. And I found that that's now exclusively what I'm listening to then. My talk podcasts I'll listen to when I'm driving. I'll listen to them when, if I can put them in the background, it's nice to listen to those because I don't need to be as focused. I can enjoy them. Whereas, because of the fact that there's not a continuity to it like there is with a long-form story where it's like, okay, I just missed a key line, and now I don't understand what's going on in the story. There's a key plot point that just completely escaped me. So it's an interesting sort of piece. Unburied is one, though, I'm definitely going to check out. I've heard nothing but good things. So I'm actually looking at it right now in Spotify for the purpose of grabbing it afterwards. I think what I run into sometimes, because there's a new Doctor Who one as well that has been released over in the BBC, which is an official one with the current Doctor. If I can't subscribe to the podcast, it's like you were saying earlier, how do I get it? And in the case of Spotify, you can go to Spotify and create your own playlist and throw it on there, and it's really easy to do. Spotify makes it pretty simple. And actually, our show runs over to Spotify as well. So for people with Spotify accounts and listen to us that way, this is something else you can grab. So anyway, cool. And I want to thank Jared for, again, curating a lot of the news this week. We rely heavily on our Facebook group to grab the news articles that are in there, and it's always great because he pulls from a variety of sources, and I really do appreciate that. Jim, did you get a chance to check out the new issue of The Flash this week?
No, I haven't yet.
So 783, and I'll stay pretty spoiler-free on this one. It's a Dark Crisis tie-in, and I believe it's a 3-part story that is going to focus on Wallace and Wally. And actually, it's not fair to even say that. It's the whole Team Flash searching for Barry Allen. And it jumps off of the stuff we've seen in like Justice League Incarnate and the Death of the Justice League recently. It's this idea of, where is Barry? The Justice League is gone. As far as everyone knows, the question is Barry alive? Is he not? And the assumption is Barry is alive and we can get him from somewhere. We've seen in previous storytelling where Barry is. And it's an interesting sort of dynamic. What would happen if you were transported all of a sudden to your ideal world, where anything that has been a conflict in your life, anything that has been a problem, a trauma, things like that, has been replaced with the perfect alternative? So your life now, people that have died are now back. Even though people you love may still be in our quote-unquote real world, what if you're with the ideal versions of them, where any problems that you've had don't exist here or have manifested and worked themselves out differently there? It's like being transported into a TV show where everything's, gumdrops and roses.
Yep.
And that's a lot of what we're seeing with where Barry's at. So Wally and Wallace and the whole team are searching for them, but it's not just them. Wally's kids are involved. And they're young, they're eager to prove themselves. And as can be the case, we'll do this, we'll prove ourselves and jump into danger. And I love that aspect of the story. I want to shout this out because as you're looking at Dark Crisis and tie-ins, do you have to read this to understand the main Dark Crisis story proper? No, it's not that. This is more if you want an in-depth exploration of how this is affecting the world of the Flash. But I'm not diminishing that by saying that what I actually love is this idea of really strong, character-driven story that are impacted by these larger events, where we can really see a look into Dark Crisis from the lens of the Flash family. This has really been a good run. And this is the right time in this run to have a tie-in, because I feel at this point the rules of the Flash book and what the Flash, what Wally's family is like, has been like thoroughly established. There's some great mystery going on with Linda right now. Mr. Terrific being his boss that continues on in this story. So it's not like all of a sudden, hey, we got a Dark Crisis tie-in. Let's drop the story already in progress and move on to this. It's not like that. Current Wally story continuity is continuing into this. So this is something that is just happening in real time for Wally. And I prefer that. Sometimes you get those jarring tie-ins where it's like, you have just completely brought to a screeching halt a 5-part story that is on part 3, and you dropped this awkwardly in there like a fill-in issue that makes no sense, and now you're going to drop me back into my story already in progress. This isn't like that. The story already in progress blends throughout this, and I like the way that they're handling this. It is a good jump-on point for new readers, so if you haven't been reading it, even though you're jumping in partway through some events that are happening in the life of Wally and his family, they give you everything you need in this. As far as you can go, okay, this is what's going on there. And yeah, I can pretty much so pick that up and focus heavily on the Dark Crisis piece. So I wouldn't be shied away if you're not a regular Flash reader to say, should I pick, if I want to just grab Dark Crisis stuff right now, 783 is a good accessible issue for people who haven't been reading it. I'm a big fan of this book, and the Flash has had some great runs. This is one of those runs where I got my fingers crossed that it's continuing with the momentum that it's got, because I've been really enjoying this so far. And Wally's, it's weird to say Wally's my guy now, because I'm really finding that I like all of the Flashes. To me, having Wally back as the main character again in this book is comfort food, where Wally was the one that really got me excited for the Flash concept. And now I'm like, oh, okay, somebody gets how to not only have this character back, but to have this character back and feel like there's more story to tell. Like we were talking about earlier with Ram V's upcoming detective run. So they're doing this with Wally, where it doesn't feel like they're treading old ground. It feels like Wally's had a sense of progression. His family's had a sense of progression. We're seeing all of this grow. And it's a pretty important part about this book. Have you been digging The Flash as a series in general, Jim?
Oh, big time. I'm big time loving The Flash. It got me motivated to read some of the old stuff, go back, and just pick up who it is. And it's funny. I like the fact that you said, Wally's your guy, but you're loving everybody.
Yeah.
Same sentiment. And I absolutely love Wally and the family. Love him and the kids. I think that is just a great dynamic, and you can't even. And again, showing why marriage, relationship, kids can work in the comic books, because that is just a great dynamic. We always talk about Lois and Clark dynamic being this epic one. Well, Wally and Linda is another one of those epic dynamics. And the fact that the marriage, the children, everything makes him a better character, makes him a better person, makes him a better hero, but also makes the story a lot more, more funner. And it's something that, I don't know. I'm digging the Flash to the point where I want more. I want multiple Flash titles now. Now I'm going to start getting greedy. I want to keep the Wally title, but I want them to bring back Barry, and I want them to do the other Flashes. I want Wallace to have his own series. I want all of them to have their own. I want like 3 or 4 Flash titles where each of them gets their own spotlight. And let's do a legacy title as well, where it's the legacy Flashes, in the main spotlight, with a one-shot here, Jay Garrick, one-shot Johnny Quick story, or, however they want to do it. It's, we've got so many bad titles. Let's do this. Let's give the Flash the same kind of treatment, where multiple Flash titles, because it's a character who could support it, and it's a character who's got this rich dynamic that they could do it. But again, I don't know number wise if it makes, if it's a good business deal for them or whatnot. But for me, the character has really become more than just a guy who runs fast. There's you get a lot of great dun-da-da moments from the Flash. That positive superhero who runs towards the danger. And Flash fact, there always is a way. Flashes always find a way. And I love that mindset. Again, it's, you look back to, with the Blackest Night story. There's a reason, Barry got the blue ring. He got just that, hope. It was him, not Superman, who got it. I thought, that's a really neat idea that the Flash, is that positive energy. I still remember back when that was going on, and he's in the police station. He's like, you tell him the Justice League has this. We've got this. And just that moment that he took with the local police to say, we've got this. Don't worry about it. Again, inspiring hope in others. And that's something that you see, really strong. Barry, you're seeing that 100% in Wally now. It's, I'm 100% all in on Flash.
Jeremy Adams has done a really good job of bringing something back, too, that I really enjoy, where the title is heavily focused on Wally and his family, but when there's events like this that are going on, there's need for it. The rest of the Flashes aren't shelved. They're out there in the DC universe, because there's a focus on a singleton city or a singleton city or a couple cities when it comes to the Flash. The idea is that these other Flashes are out there operating. Jesse Quick, Max Mercury, and of course Jay Garrick. And Bart's referenced in this particular story, and there's reasons why Bart is not in this issue that are Dark Crisis tied in that I don't want to say too much about. But I love that this Flash title, to your point, it's not about there has to be one Flash. There's clever ways to keep these other characters operating. And that was one of the hallmarks of Wally's series. Wally was the lead Flash, but these other people, they were very important. They were critically important. When you're trying to search through time and multiple dimensions for Barry Allen, you need all of these people to, who are speedsters, who are able to travel together. And this idea, too, of you don't go alone, you go in teams. So they're splitting up, yes, but nobody's going off on their own. They're all going together. You've always got somebody there to have your back. And that concept is way cool because it adds a greater sense of danger. They know they're going into danger. Everybody buddy up, buddy system. I love the concept, but it's very easy when there's big events like Dark Crisis going on that have this death and foreboding that are there for books to sleek into this, everything's dark. And the Flash titles, when they're at their best, you mentioned it in what you were just saying, there's that sense of hope. And it's a high energy, real positive book where all right, if there's anybody I believe that's going to be able to help out here, really make an impact, even when things are looking their worst, it's going to be the Flash. And I love that just positive feel. It's a nice mix to some of my other titles. I like dark. I really enjoy those kind of stories. But The Flash was a title I greatly appreciated back in the day when I first started reading it with. I walk out of this book when I'm done reading it with a very different feel, a very positive and hopeful feel. And I think that's something that's nice that you get from a book. It's a true superhero title, and but without it feeling like hokey or cheesy or out of date. It feels very contemporary. He deals with it's what I love about at times Spider-Man at its best. Where you get this, with the quips and the positive humor and things like that in it. I think Spider-Man captures that. It's not that there's not bad things or challenges that they're facing, but one other point that you made that I really could not agree with more, the ability to make his family work in this book is something I greatly appreciate because it also makes it unique. This is a guy with kids. This is a guy with a wife. That hasn't strangled the book. It's made it different. It's made it feel fresh. And they don't have to be at the forefront of every issue. Sometimes there's reasons to have Wally's story, or sometimes two stories going on, where there's a story with the kids running parallel with a story that Wally is focusing on. And sometimes they'll converge. And I love that flexibility of the writer being able to say, this is what makes sense for this story. This is the configuration of what's going on with the family. And I find that I've always loved Linda. The kids are something that either they've been understood by creative teams or they haven't. And I think the creative teams that have understood them throughout the years have been the ones that I look back on. I've really enjoyed those runs. There's been some sleeper runs that you don't hear a whole lot about where creative has really understood how to play with this family and make them interesting. And I feel this is one of those series. It's really, really good. So that's why I wanted to shout this out, because it's a book that I've been picking up The Flash because I just enjoy reading The Flash. I feel for people who aren't reading it right now, this Dark Crisis tie-in is a great way to dip your toe in, to see if this is the kind of book that you might enjoy. And at the very least, you're going to get a good Dark Crisis tie-in out of this. So, but I think it's a good thing worth checking out that I wanted to make sure to spotlight, just because I ran to it right away, and that says a lot with the amount of comics that I read. This was, when it came out, it was the first title I read.
Nothing like the handy-dandy electro claw for carving through metal doors.
Our first discussion is on Superman, Son of Kal-El. Issue number 12. Script by Tom Taylor, pencils by Cian Tomeri. I'm just going to spell out all the pencils because I don't want to insult them. Cian, last name is Tormea. The other penciler is Ruari Coleman, Ruaiar, and then Coleman. Inks by Scott Hanna, Ruari Coleman, Raul Fernandez, Sienna Torme. Colors by Federico Blee, Matt Herms. Letters by Dave Sharp. Cover by Travis Moore and Tamara Bonvillain. Variant covers by Roger Cruz, Norm Rappman, Luis Guerrero, Mario Fox Bochila, Prasad Rao, Prasaid Rao, Cressy, David Talaski. The assistant editor is Gillian Grant. Editor is Paul Kaminsky. The Progress Pride flag, DC logo, was designed by Daniel Quasar. It was kind of neat when they gave credit for that. And, of course, Superman was created by Cleveland's own Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster by special arrangement with the Jerry Siegel family. And, again, apologies to the horrible name butchering that I did on the creative team, because this is absolutely a wonderful book, and I'm sorry.
Well, and one of the reasons why we do that is really direct people to the credits section. And the idea is not to really take our mispronunciations for gospel. It's more to just increase awareness of creators. And I like getting to know the names just because of the fact that I like to see what other work am I reading with, or enjoying with these creators, because wow, there's some really amazing talent right now in comics. And I found that that's something I've really enjoyed, is getting to know my favorites, where they're going, what projects have they done. And really, it helps with my reading list, too, where there are books that will jump up my read because of the fact that I recognize a penciler that I've really enjoyed. I recognize a whole art team, I should say, that I've really enjoyed. The creative team, the writer, I tend to follow. And it's nice to be able to know what work they've done. This is a great series. I've done a catch-up recently on it where, I read the crossover with Nightwing, and I read the annual, and then I read, issue number 12, got it all caught up with this. This has been a really, really good series. And what I love about it is it's very complimentary. I'm loving what's going on in Action Comics, and we'll end up touching base with Action Comics in the coming weeks as the storyline there continues to wrap up with the big War World storyline. But what I love about this is it's a very different book because it's Earth-based, and it's this Superman really trying to figure out who he is and how the world identifies him. And it's a world that is very used to his father, who is established, but is looking to him not only as an unknown quantity, but as young. His age is working against him. It's working against him by the people that want to have a smear campaign against him, where the idea of Superman having too big of a voice, and this Superman is very vocal.
Yeah.
The idea of Superman having too big of a voice and having too big of a drive, you don't want people rallying behind. In their case, they don't want people rallying behind everything that Superman says, because some of the things that Superman is saying gets in the way of their criminal decisions, gets in the way of their business decisions, gets in the way of their political decisions. That's where this book is really succeeding for me. It feels very current, feels very now. And it's touching on issues today and not being afraid to attack them head on, where, let's be honest. Politically right now, we're a society that is, I would say, divided into three very distinct categories. We've got the left, the right, and then we've got the people in the middle who, I think there's a very large group in the middle as well. I think we're very focused as a society on trying to force people into left or right. And that's not me pushing anybody's politics. I think that's what's happening right now. When you get into a discussion, you're kind of pushed. I know I've been. I think a vast majority of people actually fall somewhere in that spectrum in the middle, where you might feel very left about these things. You might feel very right about these things. The truth is, when you're like that, you tend to pull the best of both, if that makes any sense. But this is a book that I find myself thinking about afterwards, whether, I agree with all of John's politics or John's thought process or not. I know who John is. And that's one of the things I think is bold about this book, is I think it'd be much more watered down and would be less interesting to me if the writers if Tom Taylor was not taking it there with this character. And I love that he is, because I feel like John is a fully realized three-dimensional character. I wouldn't want him to be flat and wooden, where it's like, we can't possibly talk about this. We can't possibly tackle this. We can't get John's feelings on this because we might upset some people. No, let's do that. Let's go there. This is who John is. How do you feel about it? And you want a book that people are going to have thoughts about. And I love that about this. I find it a fascinating book because of the fact that John, his family, and his relationship has been something that has just become really, really interesting in all of this. I know that for me is what is the standout about this. It's not every issue is all about politics or, his stance on that. It's more John's reaction to the world at large brings his beliefs into it. And his belief system naturally lets you know and informs, well, this is where, listen, I'm pretty sure I could stand next to John at the polls and I know exactly every button he's going to push. And that's something that's interesting in a title, because it's not always about that, and it's not overdone. It's just something that is organically a part of the book, and I like it. I really enjoy this title because it feels boy, out of all the titles I'm reading, there are very few titles that feel this contemporary, this real time, this current. This is something that if John was in our world, I feel like the stories that are taking place here are things we'd be seeing on the news now, and there'd be no awkwardness in plugging them in.
Right. Oh, God, yeah. And one of the things I'm 100% loving this book. So let's just open with that. That's, I think, very obvious on my end. But one of the things I really love about this is how John is being more vocal than Clark was. And it makes more sense for him to do that. And it's not even just the young kids being, being more political, being more outspoken. John was born on Earth. He is a natural-born U.S. citizen versus Clark, who is an alien, and this is his adopted planet. I love that, that ideology. I love the fact that John is more vocal because this is his world. This isn't the adopted world that he chose to be a champion for, that he was sent to because his planet was dying. This is his home. And I love that concept and that idea. Now, Clark, considers Earth his home. So it's not just, he's not an outsider anymore, but he always had that hands-off kind of thing because he was a Kryptonian on Earth. John is an Earthling. Yes, he's half genetically, half Kryptonian, but he is an Earthling because he was born on this planet. He was born on Earth. This is his home. And I love that fact that because of that stuff, John is a little bit more outspoken about the everyday politics, the events, the items that Superman would not get involved with, that he kept a distance from. John is getting involved with because this is his home. You should be free to speak about, your political beliefs. You should be able to defend that. You should be able to, talk about it. You should be free to say, hey, this is what I think. This is what I believe. This is what I think is right. And I love the fact that John has more of that freedom, but there's moments when he is more reserved because he recognizes he's got a big red S on his chest. And he recognizes that that's got to do stuff. And sometimes he's a kid and he doesn't recognize that, and he goes for it and he reacts. And so that's one of the neat things about him having this support cast that he's got around him. The people who are there like, hey, you got to slow down, you got to watch this. I love that that dynamic that we're seeing from this. I remember when they first did the aging of him, and I was like, oh man, I kind of wanted to see him as a kid. I kind of want to see him and Damian do stuff. I'm like, I had all these things I wanted to see. Now I'm glad they did that, because if they hadn't done that, if he still was a little kid, he couldn't be Superman. He could maybe be Superboy doing this stuff, but there's no way he would be Superman handling this. There's no way he would have this level of responsibility, this level of trust, this level of criticism of him. So you got to have both. You got to have the people trusting Superman, but you also have the people criticizing him. You have the people who don't trust him. And it's not just the evil villains not trusting him. It's everyday people because they're like, hey, who is this guy? That to me is a very realistic element of the stories. You look at what we've got currently going on in society today. You've got all levels of trust and mistrust for government, for people, for athletes, for actors, for, the various, the various level of, outspoken people, that are out there, that are standing out, if superheroes were real, they would be a part of that list. And there would be people who would be 100%, yay, Superman. And there'd be people like, I don't know. Do we trust this kid? Come on, he look at all these mistakes that he did, And you add to it the villains throwing in the feeding the fire there. But at the base of all of that is going to be regular, everyday people who just don't know. They don't know, can we trust them? Clark had that thing against him where he was this alien. John's got this where he's half alien, half human. Can we trust it? Is he one of us? He says he's Earthling, but he's not Earthling. Who is he? And I love that kind of that notion. That's the kind of stuff that they do explore in this book. And I think that's something that, you could easily do it with Clark, but it fits better, John. John fits better with those stories.
There's also the fact that time that he was away, that isn't just something that was a tool used to age him. that was also it's a story element where he's in his trauma from that. You know, he lost years of his life, not lost them. He was there. He lived them. But that was a time where he was trapped and he kept hoping for, like, the Nightwing story focused heavily on this. He kept hoping for Nightwing to come and rescue him at a certain point in time. You know, like, he was very lost and alone during that time. And that has had a major impact on him. There also, you got a family, his grandparents and his mother, who are dealing with the fact that Clark made the decision to go public because he's done that. And we talk about, you know, secret identity and how it's not just to protect the person, but to protect those closest. We are seeing a storyline right now where, because of the fact that Clark revealed that, his parents are in danger and his wife are in danger, and his son now is left to deal with that. Fortunately, there's people like Batman who are jumping on the scene and, you know, helping out with that. But wow. So we've got this attack, supposed attack, that's kicking off the issue where the defenses are engaged, and you've got these robots that are going out, and you see this thing swooping on through really quick. I love that it was Crypto.
Yes.
I am so glad to see Crypto back. And this is the absolute right book to have Crypto in. Batman's like, at this point, you know, this thing has invaded the Shield before the Shield's gotten in place. And he's getting everybody to the bunker. I love Batman immediately jumping to be the first line of defense. He's like, get to the bunker, get safe. He feels a responsibility to take care of this family, and he's going to do it. And especially because these are Clark, not only is Clark's spouse, but it's Clark's parents. So this is Bruce Wayne, who we know what happened to his parents. His motivation and driving force in making sure that what happened to him does not happen to Clark with his parents. And I love that this is just Crypto. It's just Crypto. He's come home.
Well, I'll tell you, I loved how they did this, too. You open with Superman saving somebody, and then this signal alarm. And he takes off immediately, no hesitation. The look of concern on his face, because the signal watch is only used for emergencies, and then you flip the page and you see it's Lois's signal watch. So you know that's got a special frequency even on it. So he knows that his mom just hit the signal watch. So he knows, okay, if his mom is hitting the signal watch, you know it's big time, because she will try to deal with situations on her own sometimes. She's calling for backup. And I love the fact that everything was going through, and then you get the page and you see Crypto, you know, with the head of one of those robots in his mouth. It was just a nice little game for him. I loved that. And I cheered, and I you know, with John giving him giving Crypto the little hug kind of thing. You're like, yes, Crypto. I absolutely love stories with Crypto in it. So this for me was a great opening for this story. Especially you look at all the stuff John's been dealing with. You know, it's great to have his dog back. Mm-hmm. I was like, yes.
One of the things that I've really enjoyed in this story is, I'm very pro-military. I think, you know, we need a military, and I think there's an ethical way to defend our country. And I think it's very easy to skirt those lines, what's ethical and what's not. And we could have like hours of a sidebar philosophical debate on what kind of weapons are okay, what kind are not, what kind of experimentation is okay, what kind is not. It's where it gets murky, right? Because there's all kinds of advancements that come from the medical discovery. There's all kinds of advancements that come from scientific weaponry discovery. But this touches on some unethical approaches, right? Where they are using unethical approaches to try and create their own superpowered characters, their own superpowered heroes to help defend the country. It starts to skirt that line is what is okay and what's not for a military. And I like that. I mean, because I think that's also, it's touching on some real world controversial topics. You know, what is okay when, you know, providing a good defense for your country. And I believe it's important to provide a good, fair, and viable defense. I think it's also important to be conducting research, not just for weapons, but, you know, like I mentioned, research, that scientific research in general, that can lead to medical discoveries and things like that. It's the unfortunate part is there's always those blurry lines of medical discoveries being weaponized and finding more profit in being weaponized than they would in being something that helps the overall health benefit, and vice versa, where, there's interesting topics there. And I feel this is approaching those things. And I love when comics do this, where you sit there and you're left thinking afterwards. And there's never been a story where it's like totally changed me, where I'm like, okay, now I hate this or now I hate that. It's thought provoking, where it makes me question things. It makes me think about things. It opens my mind to contemporary topics in a way that are very, very smart through fiction storytelling. That's where, we talk about wire comics literature. This is a book that, it starts off with a fun story with crypto and then delves into some very serious topics when the whole team's sitting around the table reflecting on Bendix and Luthor and what's going on there. And I really loved that whole sequence of events. And it's what I'm loving about this story. This is a book that I think this is going to seem strange to say, it got a lot of buzz because of John's sexuality, the reveal of John's sexuality. And I feel what got lost in all of that was the quality of the storytelling that's going on here. What I'm saying is there's not been a lot of discussion around that. This is a really good book. I had friends of mine who were like, okay, they're not comic readers, but they were talking about the publicity stunt. And I said, of course it's a publicity stunt getting that out there. And I don't know why we're always, that's such a bad taboo thing. No, of course, comics can make noise. They should make noise. And I applaud them for using anything that is a story element that can get buzz going. There's no such thing as bad buzz. There isn't. Comics need all the help they can get. So if bringing up the fact that Superman right now has a unique sexual preference compared to his father is something that will draw people to at least check out the book, more power to him. Yay. That being said, take that out of the equation. That is a fragment of the book. It is not the substance of the book. The book is so much more than that. Because as I said before, this is a fully developed and fully realized character. And like any other human being, their relationship is a portion of the character. It's not the whole person. And John is so much more than that. His supporting cast is so much more than that. His boyfriend in this is a very complex and so much more than that individual. I love that element of this particular story because there's still questions about the boyfriend and how much you trust him. In those times. And I love that that's been a thing on the table and conversations he's had with Batman about him and his mom about him and Nightwing about him. All have been different. 3 very different viewpoints and perspectives on the same person, on the same relationship. That's been compelling. This Bendix story with Luthor, they're talking about how do we handle all of this? And I love the grandparents are an integral part of the conversation. They are a resource. They have a rich history. What they had to do over the years to protect Clark and to be a support piece for Clark not only puts them at the table, puts them as a long-standing. We've seen a lot. We've been through a lot. We've advised on a lot. So absolutely, I want them sitting around the table giving me some advice. And their involvement in this was incredibly well written. And I love that they're back in the books and having this role because I love Ma and Pa Kent. Boy, do they make me smile whenever I see them in this book.
Yes, 100%, 100%. As you're talking, I'm nodding my head on everything you were saying there. And I think that is something that, again, John's willingness to listen, willingness to deal with, get this advice from this massive council that he does have available is something that I really love about the book. In the end, he is Superman and he is going to make the call, but listening and taking the counsel, the advice of people you trust is a sign of intelligence, And I love the fact that he is willing to do that, especially seeing Ma and Pa Kent in on that. I love that, And again, like with you, but even like you think about it, look who his mother is. If he doesn't go to his mother for advice, that would be ridiculous because everything she's been through. His Uncle Bruce is Batman. Come on, how do you not take counsel from Batman? Plus, also those crossovers with Nightwing were some of the best things. Again, some of my favorite stories on this series so far, just because that's a great dynamic of Dick Grayson and John Kent. I love that. I love John and Damian together. I love them together. It's absolutely. Anytime I see those two are together, I know I'm going to enjoy the story just because they're such great characters. But Dick and John were just perfect together. I was like, that was a great combo. And then you add to this team, it's like I love this book, not just for just for John, but all of his interactions. And I think that for me is a strength of a character that you don't just need to rely on him. You can rely on him and all the support cast, all the stuff that's coming together on this. It's absolutely just a pure delight. And then you get to it, they're sending Dick Grayson undercover at LexCorp. Now, I always question how much Lex knows about the Bat family. So does he know that Nightwing is standing in front of him? And he's just acting like he doesn't know.
No, I don't think so. I don't,
because he knows Bruce Wayne is Batman, though. That's the thing.
Does he still know that now?
I don't know.
That'd be interesting to see. The question is, does he still? Here's the thing. I know what you're talking about, and you're right. The question is that still established that he knows that now? In which, here's the thing. If he does, then how does he not know who Dick Grayson is?
Exactly.
So I guess I'm gonna say no, but have a question mark at the end of it because I don't feel Lex was acting here. But here's the thing. Lex is the ultimate chess player, right? Yes. So could he know? Yeah. It's an interesting sort of piece. I guess the question is if he still knows who Bruce is. And I think so much has happened recently with timey-wimey stuff in the DC universe as far as the universe folding back on itself. I don't know. And actually, lots happened to Lex during that time. What does Lex know and what doesn't he know? I don't know the answer to that. It's an interesting sort of question.
And the neat thing is, for me, again, I want to know, but it doesn't take away anything from what I read. Yeah. I absolutely love this because even if he does know and Lex is keeping it, under the cuff, it's a smart move on Lex's part. One, a lot of their conversation that these two had somebody else in the room. So if Lex actually knew, he wouldn't say anything around someone else because if he's got that knowledge, he's going to keep that to himself. At the end of their conversation, it is just the two of them in the room. Yeah. So it's kind of, if he knew anything, he could say it then. But again, it reads as if he doesn't know. Mm-hmm. And I'm cool with that. I'm cool with him knowing and keeping it a secret. So it's one of those things. I'm in an absolutely no-lose situation here. Both are awesome. And again, it's a great usage of Dick Grayson. It's a great usage of Lex Luthor throughout all this. Because, at any given moment, Lex is going to turn on Bendix. The second it looks like Lex's involvement is going to be made public, and that's going to ruin his public image, he's turning on Bendix. And I love the fact that I know that's coming. I know the end of this is going to be Luthor stealing Bendix's technology and then turning on him. Luthor will have the ability to create these metahumans, and Bendix will take the fall. I 100% think that's how this story is going to end, with Luthor coming out on top. Because why? He's Lex Luthor. Of course he's going to. And that'll, again, set up for future stories of John versus Lex. And that's a fight I do want to see, because I want to see how John handles Luthor versus how, Clark did. And I want to see how Luthor handles John differently than how he handled, Clark. There is still that great. I'm glad they didn't start off with that feud because, it would. I don't know. I like the fact that they're going this way, but I think 100% it's going to lead to that. And I'm excited and anticipating that. Now, granted, I could be 100% wrong, and I'd be okay with that because this is a creative team I trust. I trust the story he's telling, so I'm like, okay, let's see where it's going. And I think that's the neat thing about about everything about going on with John. There have been some swerves, there have been some surprises to me. How strong of a role Dick Grayson has in this title really surprised me. I was expecting to see a little bit more of the little monster in there, but we still are getting some Damian sightings. But having Dick Grayson in there, absolutely brilliant. I love it. Continue on that. The Bendix is the main villain for a while, leading to Lex Luthor or not leading to Lex Luthor. I'm like, yes, give me it. Keep going, man. This is wonderful.
The events in Damian's books are why Damian wouldn't make sense here right now.
Right.
So if you take a look at that, the events in Dick Grayson's book naturally lend to him being here. The justification for having him go into Lex's office and how they're playing it off of what Dick's currently doing in his book as far as the philanthropy.
Yeah.
It's really, really great. That's something I really enjoy. And you mentioned Damian. It's funny. I was thinking about Damian when we were talking about the family sitting around talking. If you took John out of that sequence and put Damian in there, it's a very different conversation.
Yeah.
You're not having the kind of confidence to sit there, because Damian, we know some of Damian's issues, and it's what I love about Damian. He's his own complex, multifaceted character. Damian's personal questioning himself would make him not want to rely on the people sitting in the room. You'd have to beat him over the head to get him to listen in the same way.
Yeah.
So it's very, very interesting. I love the fact that we've put a bug in Lex's office that takes into account the fact that Lex is going to have technology to sweep the room. So we have a dissolving bug that will be done overnight. It can be destroyed at any point in time. So we are now, eyes on the current conversation between Bendix and Luthor, and they're finding out about this senator. And they know that the Senator Henderson is a part of this. John's handling of Senator Henderson was so cool. We're not going to go in your private office. We're handling this conversation publicly, and you're going to be on camera with the truth. And the truth about, thanks to Crypto, the truth about Bendix, although tactfulness is not exactly the strong suit of Crypto.
No. You know what? I loved everything you're saying. I'm loving how they did this, how
Yes.
they did the ambush interview in the lobby. And again, it's Superman asking to see you. Mm-hmm. And all the people around with their cameras out because it's Superman. I thought this was absolutely brilliant. And then Crypto shoots the senator with his laser vision. I'm like, oh, God, Crypto, what did you just do? What happened? And I love John's like, no. I think your dog just killed a U.S. senator. And then turns out Bendix is not human, or he's been mutated. He's a metahuman now. But not only that, it's that whole control thing. And it adds to the creepiness. And I think even Ma Kent earlier said that, how turning them into superhumans and then making them just a mindless clone or something like that. It's not just about taking them and giving them powers. It's then they take over their mind. So They have no control over it. It's actually, Bendix in charge of all that stuff. And I love the fact that that adds to the creep factor and the horror of this. It's one thing to say we're going to supercharge people and we're going to give them powers and we're going to make a superpowered army to protect us so we don't have to deal with, these these capes. That's one thing. But then to say we're going to take away their free will and make them a mindless drone that I manage from my office. That's a whole nother adds on to it. And that's where it really turns into the evil side. I love the fact that Bendix was one of those guys, where he has now no control. Bendix is now dead, gone, because of, they've activated him.
Yeah, and that's something I think that has really been great about this, is the idea of him being activated and then Jay doing what he do. Jay's heroic too in his own way. He's got his own motivations. They're slightly different. I love that he and John aren't carbon copy clones. Like, there's a relationship there. It's very much like, take a look at Superman and Lois, right? It's you can see what they each bring to the table with each other. Jay's got his own way of facing the world, and it's something that John's drawn to. And he opens John up to another possibility out. See, here's the problem. Jay was offering John an opportunity through the truth to have, another life outside of being Superman. Well, Now Jay's been revealed.
Yeah.
What does that mean for all of that? It's going to be interesting to see where this goes. This kind of mass revealing of secret identities is going to lead to big problems. I like that that's being addressed. I think it's something that's fresh and interesting and intriguing. And I love seeing this. And it's great seeing it at this age, because it's hard enough at this age to navigate the world in general. You know, I mean, we know what it was like. I look back at me in my late teens and early 20s. I know the challenges I'd have navigating the things I navigate now.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready. People are ready at that age to tackle more. And it's interesting to see the difficult journey that these two are going to be continuing to face. This book is compelling. I mean, we're 12 issues in. I feel like it's just getting its start. And I don't say that in a negative way. What I mean is there's so much more story to tell. I hope this is doing well. I hope that people are giving this book a shot, because it's the reason why it got noticed, and is what I was mentioning earlier. It's not a cheap publicity stunt. I mean, yeah, sure, it's something that was worth throwing out there from a PR standpoint, because it would draw in readers and it would draw national notice. And that was a smart move. And comics need all the help they can get to get anything putting a spotlight on them right now. So I thought it was smart what they did, utilizing that aspect of the character in order to draw people into checking out the book. But it's clear that that wasn't done for PR purposes, that there is a rich, developed story to these characters and their relationship. And I love that. I mean, this just is, it's really a fun read.
Yeah.
And it's funny to focus on that. I talked about the Flash earlier and how much I love the fun factor of Flash. Superman, Son of Kal-El, also has that fun factor. I'm reading a lot of dark books, and I like the balance. I don't want everything to be a dark read. I love my, get me in there with a little dirty, I know some of my books. I love dark reads, and I love those street-level dark, more tough, gritty, focused characters. Characters like Daredevil, characters like Batman. I mean, those are my bread and butter. Those are the ones that keep me in comics. But as I've gotten older, I've come to appreciate the balance that you find in well-written books like this. And boy, is this one.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things I loved about this ending was, one, it was a cool ending. It was good to see Jay and John working together and taking down the big bad. But what you said about the fact that he's now been revealed, his mask is off. On one hand, the truth will continue. That the mask didn't really stop, not having the mask wouldn't stop the truth. What it's going to hurt is Jay and John outside of this. That was giving them an opportunity for them to not be Superman and the truth. Mm-hmm. It was giving them the opportunity, and that's now gone. And they've got to figure out how they're going to handle this. Now, in the end, I think that's going to make for some compelling side stories on the Superman side of it. I think that's going to be on the Jay and John story. That's going to add to some neat stuff. Maybe we'll get a new secret identities for them. Maybe they'll just say, hey, in the limelight, in the public eye, because Jay's got that one advantage that Lois and Clark didn't have. Whereas a physical attack on Clark Kent, he would have to protect Lois. John doesn't have that worry with Jay. So they do have, technically, these two could be out in the public eye, doing stuff themselves.
Well,
now, hang on. Hold on. Wait. It'll be harder because of the publicity. You think about celebrities, how, celebrities will say sometimes it's hard for them just to go out to eat because there's people coming up to them all the time. They're going to have those kind of issues where, because he is Superman, because he's the truth, they're going to have those public issues. But it could maybe work out.
No, and I'll tell you why. And this is the piece that I wanted to go to. Here's the problem. We're acting like Jay is an independent entity, and there's nobody else associated with Jay. What about any extended family, any friends that are attached to him? Jay's identity's out there now. They're all in danger, and they don't have his powers. So, yes, I agree with you as far as being collateral damage from John, Jay's protected. But what about Jay's been revealed now? So now it's not just John's family that is a target. It's take John out of it. Jay's been revealed now as the head of truth.
Yeah, again, yeah.
So now, here's the thing. He can't meet publicly with anybody. And here's anybody who he's already met publicly with who's a part of the truth has been compromised. So this has a huge trickle-down effect. So it's an interesting, and I think it's compelling. First of all, let me pull back and say yes to everything you said. So there's truth to everything you just said, but add another. Let's now add the other layer onto it. That yes, they could sit out in public together and have those conversations, and you don't have to worry about a missile coming through the building and killing Jay. So yes, 100% you're right. But the thing that I find, let's add another layer onto that then. What about everybody who's associated with Jay? And I mean, obviously we don't see a lot of familial connection for Jay in this book, but friends, I mean, the truth,
the other members of the truth and all that stuff. But that was something that was neat on the truth. They kept the identity secret from themselves for protection like this.
Right.
But it's going to be hard. There will be issues now with him interacting with the other truth members now that he's out there.
And did he meet with any of them publicly? And if not, here's the thing, even if they haven't, now it's how does he meet with them, even masked?
Right.
Because masked or unmasked, and even if they are masked, they can be followed. Like, it's going to be so hard for them to stay under the radar because he's now, when he's supposed to be in the shadows, he's now in the light.
Yep.
And has the spotlight on him in a way that's going to be huge. And I love that. It's added another layer of compelling. I think it's one of those things that's compelling in this. There's danger all around them because of the fact that the secrets have been revealed. And it really talks about what is a secret identity and what makes it important. It's not just downtime from being a hero. It is to protect others who are close to you. I think that is going to be broadcast through this. We see it in this. I mean, what's been going on with Ma and Pa Kent and Lois, just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. Well, and it's neat that the ending, it says next, the nightmare begins.
Yeah.
Like, the nightmare is beginning.
And I love it. So yes to everything you say and add another whole other layer onto it. And that's where it just, this book is fun because there's always and another thing. And I mean, you were taking it there. You're like, and another thing. There's this. And I'm like, well, yeah. And there's like, yes, and another thing. and I feel like we could keep going with that where like now I just threw something else on the table. And next issue, you and I were talking, you're going to come back with, hey, remember what we talked about last time? Well, now there's this. Yep. And that's the thing that's great about this book is it's not like status quo. Boy, this thing shakes it up all the time, and it's fun.
He is called Hawkman. His gauntlets possess awesome powers.
Our next discussion is Aquaman Andromeda, Book 1, written by Ram V, art by Christian Ward, letters by Aditya Bidikar, cover by Christian Ward, variant cover by Brian Hitch and Alex Sinclair, a variant cover also by Anand RK, another foil variant cover by Christian Ward, Aquaman created by Paul Norris. We've got Chris Conroy as the editor, Matthew Levine associate editor, Randy Mayer on production design, and Tiffany Huang on publication production. This book it's what I love about Black Label. It's the idea that you can take concepts that feel very close to what's going on in current continuity with these characters and just go, well, we're not beholden to current continuity, so what we're going to do is we're going to take what you know about Aquaman and we're going to stick to a lot of the core of that, but tell a different sort of story and really focus on exploring the vastness of the underwater world, exploring how things can be hidden there that you didn't even realize, and this has got the right amount of sci-fi, supernatural horror, stuff that I loved like in Aliens, because I loved that movie. And it's got a creep factor to it, right? There's something to be said for putting that into this story where there's a claustrophobia to this. Like they're in this, there's this team in this submarine. It's like this covert group that's been put together off the books, and their only support is taken out of the game. They are rescued by the Sea King, who is a legend to them. So you don't know whose side is he on. There's giant monsters and just everything that makes for a great horror story is all here. And I love that it's told from the perspective right now of people, the scientist, and her story kicks off right in the beginning. This is a really well-written story. I loved this. It was, and I didn't know what to expect. This is one of those, truthfully, Ram V writing it, I'm in. When I saw some of the preview pages for the art, I'm like, I'm in even more. It's, as this book, got a little bit more publicity, they gave me enough at a certain point in time where I'm like, I don't need to know anything else. Let me just grab it and read it. And this was one of those where it was just a grab it and read it kind of thing. This is quality. I mean, this is the stuff. For years, this was attributed to Batman stories, right? When you got that creative, team that did like a one-shot or a 3-issue or 4-issue prestige format, high-quality Batman story. I'm loving that we're getting this with Black Label with a wide variety of characters when the project warrants it. This is how you deliver an Aquaman story in Black Label. Woo.
Yeah.
Woo. This is good.
Oh, yeah. Aquaman Andromeda.
And the way you're doing that totally fits the story, right?
Exactly. I'll tell you, man, sci-fi, horror, and whatnot, is a great description for this book, and I absolutely love that. You think about just how vast the ocean is. Because we always talk about, alien, landing on Earth, abductions, and all those kind of, all those stories that are out there. I love the fact that this is all going on now in the ocean. If you look at Earth itself, if I was an alien coming to the planet, I would go for the water. I would go into the water first because that's the dominant, that's the most covered area. And if you've been watching us, okay, that's how I can go there, I can land there, I can hang out, I can figure out what's going on, I can scan. They can do all their stuff from the ocean relatively undetected, without having to deal with these pesky humans. So I love the fact that they're, this is all based out of focused in the water. It makes better sense than, just that Black Manta had that comment about how, have you ever been out to sea? Not just that simple fishing, where you go out for an afternoon, but you go out there so long that you start to lose your own mind. And I love just that notion, that concept of how, it really is a different mindset to deal with the ocean like that. I watch my fishing shows, Deadliest Catch, and they talk about how, when you're out there for multiple weeks on end, when you're out there for a month on a time, when you're doing all these long fishing trips, doing, fishing for the crab and doing all it's physical hard work, but there is that element of it. And sometimes they get it where when people get out in the ocean and you can no longer see land, it can mess with people. It can freak out. I remember there was one season where they went out to the sea. They had a greenhorn on the boat who was like, I can't do this. I got to go. I got to go. And he literally was going to the survival suit, throwing on a survival suit, was going to jump overboard and tell them, oh, just have the Coast Guard pick me up. I can't go out anymore. That's how freaked out he got, once he got out to sea. Where, when you get to the point where you can no longer see land, where you can no longer, where it's the, just that water is so deep that it's not crystal clear. It's just like this black water. It gets to you. And I love the fact that there's those elements that they're already playing into this, because that's very real. And I think that for me is something that was really cool on this whole concept of just the mental state of all these different people. This is the first issue of this. It's going to start growing and growing, and they're laying a great ground. There's a great groundwork on that. Again, with the art team, we've got pencils, inks, and colors all by the same person. this is their vision on how they're doing this. And I'm assuming them and Rambi worked well together, and actually laid out this book, because just the coloring, just the artwork, just all that little stuff that's going on there, it's really just setting that awesome tone. I was sitting there right from jump. I was like, ooh, this looks good. Oh. And by the end, after the first read through, I was like, oh, I got to read this again. And I did my art read through, and I was like just going through it, and I did something different with this one. I read it in reverse order, and what I did, and again, it was kind of an art read through, but I did it from the back to the front. And it was just one of those kind of like art appreciation type of reads where I wasn't reading the story. I was just looking and just marveling at the artwork and seeing what was in front of me on the page and all that. And it was a neat perspective on this book. And I'm glad I did it for this book. I may actually start doing that, but I don't know. It was just a neat thing going on. And this book, for some reason, really drew me to give that a try, just because the artwork is such a crucial part of the story.
You mentioned grabbing you from the beginning. I loved that this was the story of one of the scientists as a little girl. It was Yvette, right?
Yeah.
So Yvette, kind of her understanding of water and how there is the world above and there's the world below. And this idea that the meniscus of the water is but the meniscus. And as you see it in this image of her sinking further into the water with a Raggedy Ann doll, and this idea of the eyeball hitting the surface and how things are, as you commit them to the water, the shape of things change once they are within. And it's just this overall sense of water and the underground world, the vastness of it and the way that it changes things and your perspective on things. It was really, really cool, giving you a sense of things are very different down there. So what you think when you're looking at it on the surface, you are and using the surface of an eyeball as that's just the start. That is just the start. I really loved the analogy, and I thought it was something that was really well done. And to your point about art being so critical to this, underwater, there's a different sort of, when you've got a creator who understands how to use color, inking, and shading to create a sense of not only depth, but a sense of a strange world. You've got to give water effects, what motion looks like, trails being left by things breaking through the water, creating wakes. And you don't want to overdo that because you don't want to lose the beauty and the color and the majesty. But even the way that there's a filtering around any color that's done in the water that, again, gives you that sense of shape being played with because it's underwater. I really loved the art styling in that because I think my favorite Aquaman stories are the ones where they've started, we saw that in Jeff Johns' run too, where he was playing around with the depth. The idea of, as there's this whole deeper layer that we don't talk about, that we've got these horrific creatures. And I think this is doing a lot of what I liked there, where that was just scratching the surface. There's a lot more, no pun intended. There's a lot more down here for you to see that you didn't even know. There's a graveyard to these things from space, ships in general, but this ship from space crashes in this graveyard, and we need to find out what that is. And this idea of knowledge being power and what we can get from that, let's see what we find down there, and then we decide who we're going to tell. Here's another reason why you don't want to be a part of that party. What happens if they do find something down there? What are their orders to keep that information quiet, depending on what is found? When you're on a covert mission like this, there's a level of danger that I feel like we're going to find along the way. There's a lot of things they weren't told.
Yeah. With those, whenever you got these black ops like this, there's a good chance none of them are coming home.
Right, right.
And there's a good chance that the government's going to be the one who takes them out. So there's a bomb planted in their boat, and they don't realize it.
Yeah.
And it's, you run into that first contact, the concept of first contact. They're like, these are aliens. They're going to attempt first contact. They're going to try to speak to someone off, intelligent life, not of this planet. Now you'd like to think that they'd be reach out and scientists and we come in peace, but there is a whole other side of it where they're like, shoot to kill. It's what's that old 70s song was on Star Trek, and we come in peace, shoot to kill, shoot to kill. We come in peace, shoot to kill. That is very, a lot of times that happens with this stuff. So they may be thinking, hey, we're going to have first contact. And the government's like, no, we've got some bombs going on and we're going to drop them. And we're going to blow it up so we don't get, we're going to assume it means us harm. So we're just going to kill it. I think that is, again, that's always sitting in the back of my head. And I love that, the fact that, we've got all this mystery wrapped up in a single issue, right now that I'm already thinking we've got government conspiracy, we've got cover-up, we've got what is Aquaman actually going to be like in this story. There's so many different levels on this that they could go. I think that's part of my excitement on the title.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. There's a lot of layers to this. That's something I really, really enjoy about the depth that's crafted because, when you see Aquaman in the title, I think one of the things you expect is you're going to be having this heavy focus on getting to know Aquaman as a character. I like him because this is done a lot with Batman, with stories when I grew up, like stories in Detective Comics and sometimes in Batman Family, or even like some of the book on record sets, where the stories aren't necessarily told from Batman's perspective. Or there may be a story where Batman's the narrator and it's a story about other things, where his appearance in it isn't until the very end. In this story, I love the idea that Aquaman is involved in the story, but we get to really see Aquaman again as a legend. I love the idea that we're exploring the fact that there's times where Aquaman will come out of the sea and just to try and live some form of life. We talk about secret identities in the last book that we were talking about, where he'll get out there and just start working on boats and building things with his hands and knowing that those things are going to eventually weather, decay, fall apart, and he'll have to then rebuild them again. But this idea of the simple, it's a hobbyist kind of thing, right? Therapy. But it's a duality to him. That is the human side of him that's pulled to that. There is the Sea King that he can't give up. He can only be one for so long without giving in to the other. That piece of him is something that I find compelling because I do think it separates him from the other heroes in his unique, nature of being from the sea and also from land. And that part of his both parts of his heritage playing heavily into it. There's some great moments with him with, is it Sotha? S-O-A-T-H-A? Where she's somebody who he's clearly known for a long time and she's at the tail end of her life. And she knows that, this is one of her last meetings with him. This is not something that she's going to be able to likely be around for when he comes back again, but she's parting knowledge onto him, sharing things from her own life, from her own experiences she thinks will help him because she understands his struggles, because she's gotten to know him over the years. And I love those moments. And he fishes back into the sea, but then we're back to this story that's heavily focused on these scientists. And I loved that you mentioned we got some great Black Manta moments. This book is filled with a lot. It's funny how, I don't want to say how little Aquaman's in it because it makes it sound like he's only a bit character, and I don't mean it that way. There's some very strong Aquaman moments in this. But I love that the story was about a larger world that Aquaman happens to be involved in. A larger event, a larger happening that Aquaman happens to be involved in. There was something to that. I think it was just a different sort of Aquaman story than I was expecting.
I know, and it's kind of really neat with this type of Aquaman story we've got, because we're 7 pages in before we actually see him. And even then, it's not, like Aquaman being Aquaman. It's Aquaman hanging out with these people, his connection with the land, but also he's that of both worlds kind of things. But again, we're getting it from this aged, older, wise, person who's known him for so many years. Every time he comes to this village in Russia, every time he comes with the spring and then he leaves, he stays there a little bit and then he leaves. And it was a neat introduction of him in this universe because he doesn't do a lot there. It's the focus on her, on what she's seen, and focus on this world. And I love how throughout this we're getting the fact that there is some stuff going on in the ocean. The fish are jumping into nets. The children are waking up with these nightmares, that they're getting out from, and again, we know where it's coming from. It's all coming from this alien ship that's landed, in the ocean. So it's all this kind of, we know it, but now Arthur's going to go check it out, see what's going on. So it shows where he's getting connected to this. So I love the fact that the very beginning of his introduction isn't really, it is an Aquaman thing because there's something going on with the ocean, but it's not as open and out there as the hero flying in or swimming in to save the day. I love how subtle he is in this story. He's going to be epic in it, and we see that he's epic in it, but the primary focus on the storytelling are on the humans. I think that's a neat way to handle it, especially because, all of these different characters, all these different people, especially Yvette, have some type of connection to the ocean. There's a reason they're brought into this submarine. There's a reason they're brought into this team. And as I said before, we got some cool Blank Manta moments. So we know Manta's going to be a part of this. So this, for me, was an absolute brilliant, introduction and opening salvo of this story because, one, I'm 100% excited to, I've got a good connection with these characters, but two, I'm so excited to see where does this go next? What happens on this little sub? How does Manta play into this? What's Arthur going to do? Who or what is this alien life form that's on the bottom of the ocean? They did a brilliant job with that. I absolutely, I'm very, very excited for this thing.
We saw last night, we went to the Rabbit Run Theater in Madison, Ohio, and we saw Titanic the musical. And why it's relevant to this is, so you had this ship, right, that was this prototype. It was, engineered to be this new wave of living, floating city, that you could travel on and just have just a very different level of experience. Ultimately, there was some design flaws that led to some of what happened. And it was interesting seeing that and then rereading this. And because I reread this morning for the purpose of just having it fresh and all that, and it was amazing how much I connected, like the prototype quantum gravity propulsion drive, coming across that, and you're in this ship, and you're like, well, okay, this is great and all that we're in this submarine that has all this prototype technology and prototype design. What happens if any of that goes wrong and you're trapped underwater?
Yeah.
Because think about the depths, and it added a horror factor to this, where you're like, it's funny, as I've gotten older, I think I have, would I go somewhere in a ship like that? There's that part of me that would say I've got more of a claustrophobia now, and I would say no. But then there's the geeky tech person that I know, you give me enough tech, I'll probably dive in there, and I'd go. It would be interesting to see if that opportunity presented to me, what I would actually do. My instinct at first is to say, there's no way I'd say yes. Then I'm looking at that tech and I'm like, I don't know. The sci-fi fan in me would probably be geeking out like that would win over at the end. But I loved that I'm having that internal debate, right? Where I look at that and I'm not 100% sure. That was the fun part about this story, where there is a scary factor to it that just got me excited as I was reading the story. So we've got, the one guy's coming down, this guy's a killer, right? And she's a marine biologist and a behavioral scientist specialist. So they don't have the background on that engine, but they're having this in-depth conversation about this sequence that they're in. And they're talking about this creature, this ship, this ship that's out there, and wondering, does this thing view us as a threat? Debating on, are we the threat, or is it a threat? What does that look like, and what happens if it does view us as a threat? And what does that look like? It was really cool because it led to that whole Kraken bit. One of the scientists was actually reading Kraken Rises, and you have this Kraken-like creature who comes out. Boy, did the artwork shine with that. Because there's times where, an artist makes a decision about perspective, and that tentacle rising into the sky with the Esperanza was stunning. I mean, absolutely horrifically stunning. Because you get this, we as the reader are looking up at the tentacle. Talk about an effect. I mean, and it was powerful. It was a powerful visual page where you see these tiny men that are firing on this thing, and they look so small. It's like they're, talk about BB guns. We grew up as, with BB guns and stuff like that. That's what they look like they're firing at it. BB guns. Where, listen, I know you guys think you're doing something right now, but everything you're shooting at that is just irritating it. It smarts, and that's only going to make that tentacle smack down on you that much harder. I loved the visual, because that's what happened on the next page. And the Esperanza is a big boat, and you see that thing just tear through it like it is nothing. I loved the visual of that because it added this sense of terror, and sometimes that's lost because you don't have that perspective. I haven't seen that perspective used like that. It's been a long time if I've seen it. And I use, and I should say, what I'm saying is that perspective used so effectively. I've seen that perspective used before, sure, but boy, was it effective in that sequence, because I was marveling at that. I'm like, wow, this is creepy. And that was, this book did not lose that creep factor all the way through. There's a beauty in it, though, too, right? It's like, there's a beauty, I'm inventing new words. There's a beauty in the horror. There's a beauty in the terror that's there. Wow. It's stunning, stunningly effective.
The chaos of the destruction is sometimes something that they can do it really well. Like there's, some battle sequences that we've seen where it's just like, it's absolutely horrific, but it's absolutely stunningly beautiful. This is kind of one of those moments. And I loved how when the tentacle was first coming up, those kind of like the misty covering it, because, again, it's massive size, is pulling a massive volume of water along with it. So that would create like a little veil. And then first guys, there's something, and he's pulled out. And then you see it fully up and it comes smashing down. And I was like, oh, yes. And again, it was like one of those things where you're like, okay, what stirred up the Kraken? Was it the alien ship when it did its scan? Because its scan was a giant sonar blast.
Right.
And if the Kraken was underneath there, that would wake up the Kraken. Or was it something else? Was it just happened to wake up at that time to crush him? I don't know. Was it intentionally waking up the Kraken? Or was it just an accident? I don't know. And those are the kind of questions that start running through my head as I'm reading this and as I'm reading through second follow-ups. But I love the fact that the great debate on, with what do we do? We got to go up there. We got to help them. No, we can't. We're covert. Nobody knows we're here. We pop up there. We're going to make things, we're going to drop ourselves into the middle of an international incident. Mm-hmm. Maybe they will just fire on us. Maybe they'll do worse, like take the ship. So I love the fact that this crew down there, they want to go help, but they can't. They've got to stay hidden. They've got to stay down there. They've got to figure out, what are we going to do with this alien that just, to them, looks like they just unleashed the Kraken? I don't know. And I love those mysteries. I love the debate. I love the fact that even now, we as the reader 100% don't know what's going on. We're learning it as they're learning it. Those are great stories for me.
And not just about following orders, right? Because there can be the key of that where, like, okay, this is just a story about them blindly following orders. It's not about that. That's a small segment of it. It's not about following orders. It's about, we are in danger if we do this, and not just from multiple governments. Yep. So there's an interesting piece there. Talk about beauty in the artwork. When Aquaman arrives on the scene, and this is something where I really admired the color choices. We're underwater. So we're seeing reflections and light effects on Aquaman, that there's color choices used that give you a sense that this is happening underwater, and that what he would look like visually on land is vastly different than what the light sourcing and water effects are having on his body with regards to reflection and sun playing off of water and motion. Even blood. Blood, when he, is slicing into the creature with his spear, blood is flowing in a very different way than it would in the air. And I loved those effects, those visuals. You see the way the blood's interacting with the water in a way that was very beautiful. Air bubbles and things like that underneath are reacting in a very different way. I just loved the beauty of his whole combat. And every time there was a shift in perspective, there was a shift in how the light sourcing was reflecting on the water. Because there's that beautiful sequence where there's a tiny Aquaman and there's the face-on, attack on the center of the creature, where the creature, it's just them in the one panel.
Yeah.
And it's gorgeous because it's a different light sourcing. You're seeing the light coming from the top, like the top left, upper left-hand corner on down. And you see it reflecting, and you see the shadows in a very different way than you had in some of the other sequences. And those creative choices gave me a sense of the camera panning around the sequence, right? And what that would look like underwater. I just loved the art direction. It was very cinematic and gave you this sense of, wow. We were at Disney in March, and we went on that new Avatar, or newer Avatar ride that was there. And you got to walk through the land of the Na'vi and all of that. But the Avatar ride was this virtual experience where you're on the back of one of those creatures and you're actually in flight and motion. And the sense of seeing that world from the perspective of being in flight was immersive. And I felt like this story had that level of immersion where I felt like I was in reading this, I felt like I was I was being transported to a very different place. That's hard to do because we've read a lot of comics, in our tenure doing the show. So forget our own varying comic experiences prior to doing this podcast. Just in the time we've done this show, we've read and talked about a lot of comics, and I marvel at the fact that this one it's a totally new doorway. And I love when an artist is able to play around with the medium, and it's why this medium just has to be protected and has to continue, because there are artists like this that are just doing something different. And I just, to your point about this just being a different art experience, and you approached how you even tackled the art in a different, unique way, I loved that this felt very fresh. It's what I love about Black Label, and it's really important that DC protects the identity of Black Label, puts projects into Black Label like this, where that brand starts to mean something, because there's gotta be at some point that breakout story that breaks beyond us. And when I say us, I mean the traditional comic book fans. I don't know what it's going to be. I'm hoping that Black Label becomes the next Vertigo or something like that, where it hits a different audience that falls outside of us. Because this type of story, should not just be enjoyed by us. Yeah. And this is the kind of thing that can, listen, if I'm going to hand somebody who saw an Aquaman movie and's like, I'd like to read a good Aquaman comic, read Andromeda. You don't need to know anything to read Andromeda. It's given to you in the story, and I appreciate this approach, because whether you're an ongoing Aquaman reader or not, doesn't matter. If you've never read an Aquaman, you're listening to this and you're like, Aquaman's never fit in my budget before, so I don't typically pick up Aquaman stories, pick this one up. This one is a great Aquaman story, and you can jump off it afterwards and go on your merry way, but have a great visual experience. Because I'm looking at this page right now, and I'm like, I must have looked at this 20 times now.
Yep.
And I still learn new things. I see new things in the depth. I appreciate the depth even more, and that's something that wow. It's yay to the creative aspect of comics, because this is something that is very, very hard to do in other medium.
I'll tell you, it's funny. The Black Label, when it first came out, I was always thinking, it's just Elseworld. This is another Elseworld. It's become something completely different than Elseworld. And I was glad you said be the next Vertigo, because it kind of has that's the difference vibe to it. It has that it is its own entity. It is its own existence. And I think that's something that's really neat. And one of the reasons this book for me has really, I've connected really well with this book and been so locked into it after just one issue, because of the fact that they're dealing with Black Label this way, that they're making it something different. You look at the Joker movie, with Joaquin Phoenix. To me, that's Black Label. If you look at like the other Justice League or the Bat movies or Super movie or any of those that's DC. And maybe it's a DC Elseworld, but the Joker movie, that's Black Label. And I think that's, to me, how I look at it. And that's how it's kind of like why I'm looking at these titles differently, why I'm reading these titles differently, and it's something that it's kind of neat. And I love, again, how the fact that the primary focus of this title was not Aquaman. Yvette has more screen time than Aquaman does. There's more to her that we know yet, and we're going to learn who she is, what she's about. You think back to, she came to the country, looked like she and her family came to the country on the boat. Father was a fisherman, went into the water, disappeared, and she dove out to try to find him. So she's got a solid connection to the water, and you see she's a marine biologist. Is she more? Part of me wonders if eventually Yvette's going to find out that her real name is Mira, and she's actually from Atlantis as well. And maybe the people who are in the boat, the escapes were her people escaping from Atlantis, as opposed to escaping from another country.
I wouldn't be against that at all. I don't need her to be that, though. And I'm not, that's going to sound like disputing you. It's not. I think one of the things about this is you're saying that I'm like, do I care if that happens? No. There may be, here's the thing, there may be truly a compelling story reason that it goes there. And I'm like, okay, now I'm a believer, in that. So that's not about disputing you. What I like about Yvette at this point is I find her compelling enough without all of that. Like, I don't need her now to, let's give her superpowers or let's make her this. I think what I'm enjoying about Yvette right now, and it could lead to everything you just said, and I'd be completely great with it. So I want to be clear on that component. But where I'm pulling back and I'm thinking about what is it that I really like about Yvette? It's her story. I love how they have Yvette in the contemporary fashion as in a vast majority of this. But every so often you have these flashbacks, like, the one where it's Yvette come in out of the rain and she's like, Papa's still out there on the water, and she goes rushing out there. And you see this sequence where she's having flashbacks to loss and the sense of the horrific vastness of water, where she sees, somebody from her family, which was it her father? Was it somebody else? Who was out there? She's looking at what seems to be her father dying in the water, and how much of that's like true, or how much of that is, as a kid as she's grown up, her edited version of actual facts. I don't know, but I found her backstory compelling, where she has she's drawn to water. She's drawn to what she can get to know about water as a scientist. It's that scientific curiosity, that scientific interest, but she also respects the danger of water. And it's been instilled in her in a very young age, not only from lessons from her father, but what looks like now terrifying experience, where she's seeking answers of a very different kind because she's been left with questions due to circumstance. I love that. It's something that is so compelling in this story. Yvette has been just really a special character.
Oh, big time. And again, she is right now the primary focus, but everybody else on that sub is also, these characters, they took their time to develop them, get us connected to them, and we understand who they are. I'll be honest, I don't know all their names, but I know who they are. I know their motivation behind it. I really dig the captain on how he's dealing with this, because he's like, hey, orders are orders. Right now, we're continuing on with this. We can't go back. We can't surface. We can't try to save those people because of everything going on, so we're pressing forward. And I like that notion, that concept. And you can see eventually the crew is going to be like, will the crews rise up? Will there be mutiny? Will they accept this? Will there, they're laying such great groundwork for some horrific things to happen in that boat just because of the psychological effects that can happen in what they're dealing with it. And add to it, something else, I wonder how much of that alien probe that they sent out is also going to be maybe messing with their minds. Because I really do think it was that alien probe that awoke in the Kraken. So if that awoke up the Kraken, maybe it'll start messing with the people as well. Maybe Arthur's going to start getting messed with. We still have Manta not involved in this yet. How is he going to play into this? So there's so many different pieces of this puzzle that I'm really looking forward to seeing how they come together.
Yeah. And that's something where, what a gripping story. It's funny you were talking about what Black Label's become to you. I think about, I read Elseworlds when it first came out, and Elseworlds was a lot like Legends of Dark Knight when it first hit. As that label started being put on things, it wasn't just about alternate variations of Batman. It was about quality. Like, these books were being put out. They were always prestige format. They always had the top tier writers and artists. So you knew you were getting a certain quality level, if I'm making any sense. It was stuff that was reserved before for like hardcovers. Now we were getting this stuff in, alternate universes where like creators could go wild and play with concepts. And it was so new and so fresh at the time. Legends of Dark Knight did this, especially if you take a look at, and I don't want to say it was limited to this, but the first year of Legends of Dark Knight, when it first came out, it was so new and so fresh. Again, top tier creators, and I'm not saying that had a great run. So there's so many great creators throughout the years afterwards. But I remember the first year it was a very new concept. So you were getting the first year of this series and getting to see that, wait a minute, now we're going on to a different story with brand new creators with a different tone, it was, and they were great creators and top tier. After the first year, you got used to the concept, and I'm not saying that diminishes it. It doesn't, but that fresh factor. I think we're getting that with Black Label, where I think it's because Black Label as a concept is becoming fully realized. Our expectations for Black Label remain high. What you don't want to do now at this point is water that down. You want Black Label to mean something and to continue to be associated with a certain level of quality that it just separates it from, I want to be careful with this, separates it from traditional monthly titles. And in the sense that our monthly titles have an incredible level of quality. I'm not knocking monthly books when I say that. There is a different pacing to how you get that delivery out, right? With a monthly book, your expectation is the creative chore of that is getting that book out on time with the best level of quality possible in the time frame, so that way people can enjoy the serialized storytelling. It's the difference between a television series, the 22 episode series, and a mini series that is able to be given more time, in television. So I think you get a different expectation on the quality. You're going to have every so often on that 22 episode TV series some fill-in episodes, and that's okay. Sometimes those serve a character-driven purpose and things like that to continue on the story. You're not going to give me a fill-in story with Black Label. And you should, and if you do, shame on you. It should not be a Black Label story. It doesn't mean that story is not valid, but that story should be told elsewhere and be put out because it's a good story. I love good stories. Black Label has to be exceptional. It has to be something that's just a different sort of unique presentation and quality. This is example of what Black Label should be. So good. If you missed this, do yourself a favor and really consider picking this up, because it's gorgeous.
Come on, Skreel. Let's pay these Plutonian beam makers a visit.
I would like to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or drnorge on Skype. We love having you part of the show. RagingBullets@gmail.com is our email address if you prefer to contact us that way. RagingBullets.com is our show website. We always post our episodes there first. They then feed from there into Twitter and to our Facebook fan page. We are also proud to be part of an amazing Facebook group community. And the news items that I talked about in Speeding Bullets, thank you to Jared and actually to everyone there who then posts comments and thoughts on the news articles that are there. But anything that we referenced here, you can expand out and explore in further detail because the links to the source material all on our Facebook group, thanks to Jared. I want to thank everybody who takes the time to post articles there because it really helps us to have that conversation around Speeding Bullets. And Speeding Bullets is always a team effort, and we really rely heavily on our Facebook group team to make that segment happen. So thank you very much for everybody who's taken the time to put that together. The About Us section of our show website is where you can find out to connect with us on gaming platforms and social media. We love connecting with you, so feel free to connect us on our personal accounts as well. We are sponsored, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Mr. Seguin, what is going on over at DCBService.com?
We have Deceased, War of the Undead Gods, issue number 1, 40% off, $2.99. And we have the new champion of Shazam, issue number 1, 40% off only, $2.99. Thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, as I mentioned, there's a wide variety of books that are up there right now, and this changes out constantly, that you can add to your own wish list. This is really great. You can sort them in all kinds of fashions, including release date, which is nice if you're trying to, like me, you try to spread out your budget where you're like, I want to get, a few more. I've got this great stockpile of trades that are things that I wanted to get to before that I want to be able to read through a wide variety of publishers. And the nice part about InStockTrades.com is you can easily create your own custom wish list of books that you don't want to miss and spread that out in a way that makes sense for you to purchase them according to your budget. So I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Our next episode, Jim, we are going to be back. We're first of all going to announce our next contest, which is going to be kicking off in July, and it's going to run through till September. We have a really fun idea about that, so we'll announce that next episode and some cool ideas for prizes in how we can do some cool collaborative things with the winners of the contest. We're also going to be talking about 2 very cool books in Batman Catwoman as it wraps up with issue number 12. And season 2 of Swamp Thing, which is we're going to talk about in issue 14 of that particular series. So we will see you next week.
All right, you guys. Are you ready to sing your song?
I'd say we are. Yeah, let's sing it now.
Okay, this should be fun. Now get ready for your cue. Okay, Sean?
Okay.
Okay, Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Raging Bullets time is here. We talk about what we hold dear. Comic books and TV shows. Superheroes and their clothes. Justice League and so much more. I just love Green Lantern Corps. We talk about the books we've read with spoilers straight ahead.
Okay, fellas, get ready. That was very good, Sean.
Naturally.
Jim, you're a little flat there, so be careful. Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Justice League and so much more. I still love Green Lantern Corps. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show. DC Comics are what
excellent job, guys.
Let's sing it again. Yeah, let's sing it again.
No, that's enough. Let's not push it.
Push it. What is that? Yeah, what are you talking about?
No, I didn't mean to buy that.
I think
Jim,
it's
how long do you want the song to go?
Look, it's